This conference will now be recorded.
Welcome to the Avon Board of Finance meeting. Today is April 9. It's 7 o'clock on my iPhone. So why don't we start off with the Pledge of Allegiance. Yeah. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So, welcome. In order to make sure we have everybody starting off with the same basic ground, I'm going to ask Brandon Robertson if he can go through the quick PowerPoint that he has got, that I understand has been slightly updated.
Okay. Thanks, Houston. Can everybody hear me okay? Okay. So just a couple of quick slides to give everybody kind of a level set as to where the budget currently stands. If you go to the next slide, this is the proposed budget that was discussed at the public hearing on Monday night. And this is basically the same slide that you saw by way of summary. Up top, you've got town, education, debt service, capital projects. You've got a total general fund budget proposed of $111,801,349 for an overall increase of $4,064,307. That's an increase of 3.77%. So that's the general fund. That is the portion of the budget that is supported by the tax levy. As you go down, you see town, education, capital projects. These are special revenue funds. These are supported by revenues other than the tax levy, like user fees, for instance, as an example with the sewer use fund. So you can see as a category, the total amount of special revenue funds being appropriated is down $755,000, $755,278, or about 9.76%. And we go down to the grand total, both general fund and special revenue funds. This is the amount that at this point would be considered for referral to the town meeting and then referendum. That number is 118,782,594 for a year-over-year increase of $3,309,029, or 2.87%. So that's the proposed spending summary for both the general fund and the special revenue funds. The next slide is how we move into the mill rate calculation. So the amount of taxes that have to be raised to support that level of spending is $99,281,440. You divide that by the net grand list of $3,198,500,000. You multiply by 1,000. And you get a mill rate of 31.04. And that 31.04 mill rate would represent a 4.65% increase over the current year mill rate of 29.66. So before the Board of Finance begins discussions tonight, there are two adjustments that are being proposed. These are items that the Board of Finance and the Town Council approved after the budget was submitted to the Board of Finance. The first is the state legislature, very late in the game this legislative session, approved legislation that at local option allows municipalities to adopt a different depreciation schedule from that included in the state statute. Like many other towns, Avon decided to adopt that depreciation schedule. We had a special council meeting on the 26th to discuss it, present it. They ultimately approved it. The bottom line is that it has nothing to do with the tax levy. It doesn't raise any additional taxes, but the grand list does increase, thereby decreasing the mill rate that would be required to fund the proposed budget. I'll show you how that works on the next slide. The other change that's been approved by the Board of Education on March 25th is a revision to their general fund operating budget in the amount of $159,387. So that's a reduction from what was originally approved by the Board of Ed back in January and what was reflected in the Town Council proposed budget. So moving on to the next slide, what you have here is the revised proposed budget summary. The only lines that change here is the education row up top to reflect the reduction of the general fund Board of Ed budget. The general fund subtotal goes down, and then the grand total also goes down by that amount, so that the total proposed budget would be $118,623,207, an increase of $3,149,642, or 2.73%. So the last and final step here is that because the grand list is increased, because of the change in the depreciation schedule as approved by the Town Council, and the reduction of about $160,000 in the Board of Education general fund budget, both the tax levy and the mill rate change. So the new tax levy would be $99,119,417. Again, you divide that by a larger grand list of $3,223,395,681. You multiply that by 1,000, and you get the new required mill rate of 30.75. And if you calculate the percent change between the new mill rate of 30.75 and the current mill rate of 29.66, you get a required mill rate of 30.75, or a 3.67% increase. And again, that's as compared to the 4.65 we were at before factoring in the Board of Ed reduction and the change in motor vehicle values. So that's where the budget currently stands. The next steps in this process are prescribed by the charter. As most of you probably know, the next step is that tonight the Board of Finance will adopt a proposed budget by resolution that would then be submitted to the town meeting for Monday, May 5th at 7 o'clock here at the same location. And then the town meeting would adjourn to the budget referendum, which would be held on Wednesday, the 14th. So thank you.
Thank you. What I'm going to do is call on the other boards. And so we'll start off with the chair, and because he's behind me and I can't see him, Dan Bahamas will ask him to lead off. And then if any members of the town council want to make a comment, we will be happy to hear them.
Thanks, Houston. Can you guys hear me? Yeah. Okay. I just, I want to take a second to thank everybody involved for helping us get to this point. We started a pretty scary number. 4.7, I think, is higher than any of us were comfortable with. And we're down to a 3.7 now. frankly, in most years, that would still feel pretty high. But at this point, it feels like a little bit of a win to even get it down to that. It wasn't easy getting here, but I think ultimately, we're able to provide a budget that preserves services while keeping next year's leadership in a decent position to focus on running the town rather than avoiding disaster. I think we all, should recognize that we are budgeting extremely tightly right now. So, I think we just have to accept that volatility is going to be high, predictability is going to be low, and we could easily end up in a pretty bad situation next year, particularly given our reliance on interest income at this point. But I think, thinking back to last night, the predominant theme last night was really not at all to do with this year's budget, but frustration with what the town council did last year in reducing the use of cash from 2.25 million down to 1.25 million after the third failed referendum. And look, I mean, we're having a hard time conveying this message to the public, but hopefully we all see why we did this at this point. If we hadn't, we'd be looking at another percentage point increase on the taxes right now to cover last year's expenditures. And so, I ask you, what would we do to shave $1 million off the budget that we have right now? Well, I mean, what would that look like? It would have to be a reduction in force. And so, to that point, if we're to come down at all from where we are right now, I think it has to be. I think at least a good portion of it has to be reductions in recurring expenses. If we slash roads, if we slash capital, if we pull cash again, and I think you can think of the two equivalently, then we put whoever is leading the town next year at unreasonable risk. And I think the good thing is right now, without doing any of that, we have a reasonable budget we can put in front of the public. I think we should let them vote on this budget as is. This is a budget that again preserves services, but is about as low as you can go while doing that. If it goes down, I think we will have to look at reductions. We can, elections are in November, right? The whole town council is up for re-election. We could all be heroes here tonight and use a bunch of cash and get it down to 0%, and just throw the town under the bus for next year. That is absolutely not the responsible thing to do. Again, I think what we have in front of us now is a responsible budget. I hope this is the one that we can bring out to the public. So thank you again for everybody for taking time out of your life to help the town be in a good position moving forward. I really do appreciate everybody's time and effort, and I value all of your opinions regardless of whether I agree with them or not. So thank you.
All right. Does any member of the town council wish to make a comment? All right. You'll have to use the microphone so that people can hear you.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Let's see, Monday night, some people brought up some issues, and I was just curious if we know the answers to them. So one person had suggested that there's a lot going on at the state of Connecticut level with unfunded mandates, and he was wondering what all of the unfunded mandates are that Avon is having to shoulder. Do we even know that number, or is that?
I don't think we know that off the top of our head. There is a possible additional unfunded mandate that may come down that will require us, and it's not been passed yet, so we don't know how it's done, and we don't know how it'll be interpreted, to provide defined benefit retirement plans for all town people. We got out of that. We fixed it so that people will have, I believe it's 403Bs, so they can make contributions. And then however it ends up, that's what they can draw on when they retire. The problem with defined benefit plans is people don't fund them adequately. As we know with our other post-employment benefit plans, we ourselves are working on funding it. to the level suggested by our actuaries. It's not there yet. And we've been working on it for a while. So that would be a horrific unfunded mandate.
Okay. And since we might not even know that answer before the May, is it May 5th, the Monday meeting in May, is it too complicated, or is it possible to get the, except for that unfunded mandate number that Avon faces this year, just so the public knows what the town is dealing with?
We'll see if we can come up with a number.
Okay. I mean, I figured since he asked the question, maybe he'll show up on that Monday, or other people may be interested in that same thing. Let's see. And then this is very specific, but someone else mentioned library. Because I know we've talked with our town librarian where, you know, people don't want to miss out on certain opportunities and closing, et cetera. But is there any way where we could do, and this isn't my idea, someone mentioned it, I think Monday night, cost sharing, where on days that potentially we could have saved money by closing it, instead coordinate with other libraries where if Avon's is closed on a Sunday, maybe someone else's is only closed on a Saturday, and then people in town won't miss out. They just have to drive slightly further to either Farmington, Canton, or Simsbury. I'm not sure.
I don't believe that that's been considered, and I
Okay.
don't think it would be a possible thing to do. I mean, people can do it by looking up current library hours,
Yeah.
but to have Avon pay for another town's library, that would be a problem.
Oh, no, I don't think we wouldn't.
You said cost sharing.
Yeah, but cost sharing in a way where every town saves by not having to be open as many days. But because of, if every town chooses a different day to be closed, every town gets to save some money that way. So if one,
I
if we
hear you. It
choose-
certainly makes it difficult for kids on bikes
Okay.
to show
Yeah,
up at the library,
Yeah.
and some kids do in fact rely upon that.
Yep, okay. And then, let's see, the one quick question for Board of Ed. Someone had asked about the teachers being cut because there were some, a decrease in enrollment, et cetera. So are teachers so far in this budget just being cut because we have fewer students enrolled, or are we actually doing one of those things where part of the the new contract where you cut a teacher but you spread out the remaining children, give a few extra to each teacher, but then they get a stipend to pay for that? I didn't know if that was included in what you were talking about.
No.
Okay.
We're just talking about actual sections. So it's fewer students, particularly in certain grade levels, and we're able to, for example, in first grade, we need 2 less sections than we have in the current year. In fourth grade, we need 1 less section than we do in the current year.
Okay.
And the high school would be the place more likely if that were to happen, what you're asking. And I don't foresee that right now.
Yeah.
Their schedule isn't done. I mean, sometimes that happens having nothing to do with the number of people there, but just,
Who signs up for
yes, just many students who may want to take a class and rather than turn them away,
what? Okay.
extra put in.
All right. And then I have one, you know, it may be too late for this year's budget, but I think we should also keep in mind the potential, and this is for the town council, what we might be doing with the old Board of Ed building on Simsbury Road, that property, because that could be something where if we sold it or if we used it in some way where it could become taxable again, taxable property. It's just something to think about.
Well, it's not been considered because it's just not been considered. It hasn't, the transition hasn't been finished.
Right.
So
Not for this year. Right.
it's a rumination about something in the future.
Yep. All right.
All right,
Thank
thank you. Any other members of the town council?
Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
I just wanted to thank everybody on all the boards and the town and the schools. And this is a several months long, almost year-long process every year. And I know how much hard work goes into it. And I appreciate the differences of opinion and conversations we've had and viewpoints. I think we've had some good discussions along the way. I feel like this is a very responsible budget. It's very tight. There are some things that make me very nervous about how tight it is, particularly considering the volatility that's out there right now. You know, today the market's up, but you just don't know from day to day. And I worry about federal dollars. We're talking about unfunded mandates, which are obviously, I agree, a huge issue. I think the town does a great job getting grant funding wherever we can to help things out, the school as well. But I really worry about the federal dollars drying up. So I worry very much about lowering this budget any. You know, we know I'm a realtor. We know how in demand. I think the other night Dan showed it. We were like number 7 in niche. And I think that's not just because of the schools, but that's an enormous part of it. It's because of the community that we are and the people that make up this community, from, you know, the schools all the way up to the senior center, you know, our fire, our police, our library, obviously our teachers, and, you know, just in the discussions of getting down to this dollar amount that we've gotten to, we've had to talk about potentially losing a police officer position, and we know that we could be losing a lot of great personnel in the town and especially at the schools. And since I feel like that's part of what makes our community and so great and such a wonderful place to live in, and what helps attract people here and put us up in that top 10 list and keep our house values where they are, which is beneficial when you go to sell for sure. I hope that people take a very close look at this budget and support it the way that it is, because I think there are some extraordinarily tough decisions to be made if we have to go back to the drawing table. So I just wanted to say that and thank everybody for all their hard work again.
I appreciate your comments.
I just wanted to make a couple of comments based on Monday night and then things that we didn't discuss yet at this point. So one of the comments that was made on Monday night was that we should really be thinking about what we need versus what we want. And I just wanted to take a second to think back on what we have listed for capital projects. So we've already actually cut 20 capital projects that were requested that didn't make this budget. And if you look at those projects that remain, there's nothing frivolous on here at all. We're talking road improvements, door replacements, security camera upgrades. These things, some are required, like our conservation document. Some things have already been put off for many years, and some things need to be done for safety and for equity reasons. And so I do believe that the capital projects that people will be paying for are things that our town needs. They're not things that we want. If they were things that we wanted, we'd be going to the master recreation plan. We'd be putting in an indoor swimming pool that many people ask me for. That's not happening if we can't pass the bare bones budget. And so that leaves us with services. We've talked about this before. The number of town employees that we have has not changed over time with the growth of the residents in the town. And now we're actually at the point that we're losing employees. We've now lost 3 of our children's librarians, leaving our children's department with fewer librarians to maintain the services that they want to maintain because they're a wonderful department. We're not losing these people because they have to move out of state, their family has needs in other areas. They're leaving because of their salary. And pretty soon, if this budget isn't passed, they'll be leaving because we don't have the budget to pay even that salary. So I really worry about maintaining just the basic services that we already have in town. And then finally, I wanted to make a point that one thing we didn't talk about, which was a big point that was raised last year, was our veterans. So last year, our veterans asked us to make some adjustments on their property taxes, and we really wanted to actually do that this year. We talked about it at length at one of our meetings, and then actually a state mandate came down that those that are 100% total and permanent disabled from their service time now have full forgiveness of their property tax. So that actually adjusted our grand list, I believe, by $6 million, which is wonderful for those veterans that aren't able to go out and do the work to maintain their household, to maintain their daily living, and then to also pay taxes. So that's wonderful. But I did want to bring that up because we are able to provide that to our veterans this year. We wish that we could have done more. That was what was asked of us last year. And hopefully in the future we will be able to do more. But at least for that population of the veterans, we were able to do that. And that means that there's an adjustment to the rest of the neighbors in town, but I think that's important to support our veterans, especially those that are permanently and totally disabled. And that's it.
Mr. Weber, would you like to make some comments? All right. Although it.
No, I think that my colleague said it more eloquently than I ever could. So thank you.
Well, just to let people know, the Hartford Courant mentioned, and it may be somewhat alarmist because we've managed Avon a little bit better. Wallingford's tax increase is 19%. Takes your breath away. West Hartford is 7.3, Cheshire is 12.7, Bristol is 5.3, and Middletown is just a tinge over 9%. So we are obviously nowhere in those positions, but I wanted to make sure that people knew about that Hartford Courant article from yesterday. Would the Board of Education like to say something? And Ms. Shute, would you like to lead off?
Yes, thank you. So first of all, thank you to Town Council members and Board of Finance members. We're all in this together. I know we're on 3 separate boards, but we represent the town. I know in our role here on the Board of Ed, we take very seriously that we represent our students and we represent the staff that serves them. We are incredibly proud of what our students are accomplishing. They are doing a phenomenal job, and they're guided and inspired by our staff. And we know that we entice people to move here because of that. And so we truly have worked tirelessly. Dr. Carnamola, with her team, asked every teacher to count every glue stick, count every crayon. We take it very seriously that we do not want to ask any more of the town than what they can give, because we pay the taxes as well. We're members of this community too. But we do everything we can not to harm our students. The goal is to do everything we can to maintain at least what we have. It's sad that we can't do more fun things for them. I wish we could have a little bit more to offer and just make it that much more exciting and inspiring for them to come to school engaged every day. That's really the goal, is to lead a new generation of citizens, right? So we've worked incredibly hard. As you can see, we brought it down even more since our first request. So please just know that our hearts are in this and that we have the best interests of everyone in mind, and we do not have anything extra. This is incredibly lean. Any more cuts and we risk touching the students. So I just ask you to keep that in mind, please, when making decisions.
Does any other member of the Board of Education like to comment? Or Dr. Carnamola, if you would like to comment, I'd be happy to hear that as well.
I would just like to say that I never want to see a tax increase. I don't want to see our students or our staff being harmed, but I do think that it would be the responsibility of us as the 3 boards if we could come together and petition the town to see how we can ask them to change the formula for the funding, for the state grants, for the ECS funding. Avon gets drastically lower than our neighboring towns. It's a formula that's, in my opinion, outdated. We are paying, I have, just give me 1 second. Yeah, we are paying about almost $100 million of state income taxes and are getting about $700,000 in ECS funding, whereas Simsbury's getting about 10 times as much. They've explained the formula to us. It's my opinion that I think it is outdated, and if we could come together, and I think that's where we're lacking in the Board of Education's budget. It's not what we're asking for, it's what we're receiving from the state. So I have last year we received $909,358 in ECS funds, and we're projected to receive $832,104 this year. Avon paid, from the last one that I have in 2020, we paid $93.3 million, or $500,501 per capita.
Can I just clarify that I think you meant to say petition the state.
Yes.
At the beginning, you said petition the town.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So I just want to make
yes.
sure everybody gets that this
Yes.
this is a funding formula
Yes.
that comes from
Yes.
the state.
So I'm asking the town, the three
For all
boards.
three boards,
Yes.
right.
And residents petition the state together. I apologize. For special education funding, not for the ECS.
Right, well, that's
Yeah.
not something that Avon can unilaterally set, but obviously we can raise the issue with the state, and it's, perhaps I understate, highly political.
I think that there's probably agreement amongst the boards about, because I think, I don't know, I know I was there for the Board of Ed when they had
February.
yes, which was a great meeting to have to understand it. And I think when we see the numbers that come through from neighboring towns, it leaves you scratching your head, and it's really frustrating. And I think there's probably a pretty unanimous agreement. I mean, I don't want to speak for others, but I think there's probably a very strong agreement that we wish that there was a change to that. So, again, I don't know that there's much that we can do beyond what we've done and keep banging that drum. Yeah.
And I do want to be clear that the letter that we sent did cover request for the formula for ECS as well as special education. So we do try, and it's not the first time we've asked. We have asked multiple times, and we have had them come to our meetings multiple times to explain it so that people have a better understanding. Obviously, our boards shuffle and you evolve with time, and different members come on, and not everybody knows. So we want to make sure when you come on the board, you understand how this works. And as frustrating as it can be, it doesn't stop the work that the town has to do to keep moving us forward. But I agree we should keep asking, but it doesn't stop the working of the town.
I think you've got one more person who wants to speak.
Yeah, I wanted to speak as not only a board member, but as a father. I was a dad on the PTO in Roaring Brook. Shout out to Roaring Brook. And I got to see a lot of what they do and what all the schools do and what the teachers do and what the parents do. And it is a phenomenal thing to live in this town. I got to see what it looks like to be in a school through a pandemic and what that looked like. And I have 3 sons. One is in Roaring Brook now. 2 of them will be in there next year. And my eldest son, he went into preschool needing speech. And by the time he got to kindergarten, it was like a new child. By the time he got to kindergarten, he was reading. I say all that not to just say that my kid is awesome, but it speaks volumes to the quality of the teachers and admin that we have in this town. Thank you. I just want to say thank you. I know that we all here work hours to do all of this budget, but the people that are on the ground every day, we appreciate you so much. Thank you.
Further comments from the Board of Ed? All right, Hearing none, what I'm going to do is shift to the Board of Finance. So just so it's clear, ultimately, assuming what we agree on is the current budget, I'll just let people know what the draft resolution would be. The draft resolution would be in accordance with section 9.4.1B of the town charter after a public hearing held today and the previous day, April 7, 2025, and after due consultation with the town council and the Board of Education on April 8, the Board of Finance hereby recommends an annual budget meeting, recommends to the annual budget meeting a budget in the amount of, currently we have the amount of the budget written in, $118,625,207 for the fiscal year 2025 to 2026. So that's the general form. We obviously can play with, and I don't use the word play pejoratively, we can work with the number, we can leave it, we can increase it, we can decrease it. So what I'd like to do is start off with comments from the members of the Board of Finance. Brian, would you like to lead on?
Sure, thank you, Houston. So as we thoughtfully consider this year's budget, let's not forget what transpired last year. This is written on July 11th in the CT Insider. The headlines read, Avon Town Council adopts $115 million budget despite being rejected by voters 3 times. All 4 Democratic Town Council members voted to adopt the 24-25 budget and set a tax rate of 0.99% last night after a contentious budget season. The one Republican member, Margaret Bratton, on Town Council voted against it. Let me continue. And even though the majority of voters had overwhelmingly defeated each budget proposal in referendums over the past few months, the town's charter and a 2002 legal opinion determined that it is in the hands of the town council to adopt a budget and set a tax rate after 3 referendums. Kathleen Johnson, chairwoman of the Republican Town Committee, said that if there were more transparency and education from the town throughout the entire process, there might have been a different outcome, with less political involvement in the resident anger and confusion. Again, let this sink in. There were 3 failed referendums last year, and the town council unilaterally went against the voters and increased the budget. Before I make my own somewhat pointed comments on the budget presentation on Monday, I would like to recognize that we do live in a wonderful community and have a good school system and people in public service who care deeply about Avon. Like many, I too am extremely grateful for their service and dedication and recognize hard work went into the budget. But I view my role on the Board of Finance to constructively challenge what's presented before us during this budget workshop, advocating for the voters who elected me. We not forget that the funds supporting all of the services are in fact the voters' funds. On Monday, once again, I heard the polarizing terms of rating the assigned fund. But really what occurred last year was just recognizing the fact that there was a significant amount of sandbagging embedded in last year's budget on the revenue side, which resulted in a multi-million-dollar favorable variance in interest income. And the funds were, as expected, put right back in, now resulting in an unassigned fund balance of slightly over policy target of 15%. The fact remains that the real issue is the level of spending, which necessitates a certain level of tax increases. What really caught my attention was a slide titled, "Can additional reductions be made?" As expected, it tugs at the heartstrings with cutting the likes of patrol officer, going to our safety, the free public library, taking books away from kids, and then the cutting of the senior care lunch program. Oh, think of the images of all these cuts conjure up. What is striking is the aggregate dollar amount of these cuts, $263,561, which would, as the presentation clearly highlighted, undermine the town's ability to meet its core mission. Just think of this. We can't find a little over $250,000 in a $112 million budget. Let's be honest, we don't actually start the process with an empty scale. We start with an extraordinarily large level of expenditures and then need to find revenues to support the spend. Perhaps we need to employ a DOGE consultant to look at things differently. Recognizing that this is a workshop, I'd ask, can the Board of Ed or the town come up with additional savings not identified on this $263,000 list? The presentations made on Monday also highlight what wasn't funded. It's akin to me saying to my wife that I saved money today by choosing not to go to the dealership to get my oil changed, but stating that I went to the local garage. The fact remains, I still outsourced the changing of the oil versus doing it myself. The slides and general tone of the presentations appeared to present the voters with a Hobson's choice. The chair of the town council said there are no good options, and this is the less than a maintenance budget. Let's see what the voters think of the budget. Maybe they'll come out in droves, more than the 9% required, and vote no because the tax increase isn't large enough, and they want more. This was exactly the contention made by one member of the Board of Finance on Monday for the rejection of last year's budget. I really don't think that was the reason the budget was voted down last year. I would contend that the voters did in fact reject the budget 3 times last year because spending increased 4.3% and not because it wasn't high enough.
And I would like to just ask what your number is.
What number?
What do you think we should do as a budget tonight? Well, why don't you leave your microphone on so the virtual audience can hear you?
I did not present a number.
I know, but I'm asking if you have a number.
I do not.
Okay.
I asked, can the Board of Ed or the Board of Finance or the Board of Town come up with a number?
I hear you, although
I do not have a number.
that's our job tonight. So, all right, Carl, I think you're up next. If you'd like to turn on your microphone so that the virtual audience can hear you.
Thank you all for your hard work and dedication, and I have no questions, and I would approve the budget moving forward.
Okay, I appreciate that. Kathleen, I think you're sort of up next as we're working in towards me.
So I also appreciate all the work that the Board of Education and the Town Council have done to bring these numbers down. You know, given the fact that we had over $3 million left over last year, 3.8, almost $4 million, you know, at the end of the year when we did our final transfers, some people refer to that as being overtaxed because it's not, you know, within a 1%. And the year before, we had $3.6 million of funds that we assigned to other projects that were left over at the end of the year so that we could balance out our books to zero. And last year, we also had residual funds left over from capital projects of $1.36 million, which gave us a total of $5.179 million left over to put into assignment. I understand that we're never going to be zero. I wouldn't want us to be zero because we shouldn't be left with zero money at the end of the year. We always want to have something left over. But to say that there's no room to do anything here, and as Brian said, that $236,000 worth of things that are going to pull at our heartstrings, you know, there is room. We had $4 million left over last year. I don't have any particular thing here. I did get some emails from some constituents wondering if, because diversity directors are being cut across the country, is that something that we need to keep in a full-time position here in the town? There were comments about the library, perhaps switching with other towns, scheduling to have 1 day a week on the weekend close off. We don't have Sunday hours in the summertime. Obviously, the kids aren't in school. They don't necessarily need it. But I don't know for sure, but I'm thinking that most of the houses in town have internet access, which is where we can, we can get books, we can do our projects, we can do whatever we want off the internet. And then also going forward, looking at shared services with other towns. This person mentioned Canton, as far as, service coordinators or town assessors. And we already talked about this one. So, I think that there's been a remarkable job done to bring this down to the low percentage that we're going to have in the budget increase and the mill rate increase. I'm not suggesting anything tonight, but as Brian said, we're going to put it to the voters and see what they say.
Okay, well, tonight is tonight. We get to make the decision. So sort of continuing on the other side, and he's on virtually. Micah, I think you are next, if I have figured it out correctly.
Wonderful. Can you hear me?
Yes, you're a little fuzzy, so maybe if you step a little bit back from your microphone, not seeing how close you are.
Well, my microphone is inside my ear, inside my headset, so I can't step away from it. This will just have to do. So as we consider the proposed budget, it's important to recognize the considerable effort and diligence that brought us to this point. Months of careful review, discussion, and revision have already led to meaningful cuts. Every line item has been scrutinized with the goal of maintaining the quality of services while being deeply mindful of the cost. This budget is not padded. It is lean, prudent, and responsible. This is not the opening bid in a negotiation. It is the result of a thorough and professional process led by responsible, top-tier town leadership. What is presented today reflects their commitment to fiscal discipline and to preserving the high standards our community accepts and deserves. It's important to remember that the role of the Board of Finance is not to relitigate every budgetary decision made by the departments and elected bodies, but to ensure that a rigorous, transparent process was followed, and that there is no evidence of fraud, waste, or abuse. In this case, that standard has been fully met. My confidence in the integrity of this process and in the professionals who led it is high. To reduce further would be to compromise the very foundation that makes Avon such an exceptional place to live. Our schools, our library, public safety, infrastructure, and community services are not luxuries. Maybe in Avon they are a bit. They are investments in our shared quality of life, a high one that we have here. Supporting this budget is a vote to preserve the excellence we enjoy today and to ensure that Avon remains a place we are proud to call home. I support this budget the way it's presented and will vote accordingly.
Thank you. Mike, would you care to comment?
Yeah, I just want to say, first, I'm new, so I came in on the latter stages of this process, so I'm not going to sit on any high horse and put out comments. I can just tell you what I've seen since I've been here. I've seen a lot of people doing a lot of hard work for a long time. I've talked to several individuals, very impressed at the time and effort and concern about producing a budget that was of high quality. As a independent outsider coming into this, I kind of developed an opinion, and my opinion was generally, don't forget about investing in this community. Avon is Avon because of all the investments made in the last 30 years. If you start to overlay inflation on some of the numbers, you can actually look, we were under reducing costs over the last several years when you factor in the inflationary cost of money. You can do that for a little bit. You can do it in macro environment events like the 2008 banking crisis. And I know there was some things last year with the valuation changes. But the town council should not forget about investing in the people of this town and in the community. And the Board of Ed should not forget about investing about the teachers. I know Stu Abrams is leaving, and he was a tremendous influence on my kids. And we should be out there finding the next Stu Abrams to come into the school and not reducing. And we should look at growing and developing and thinking about Avon 10 years from now based on your decisions, not, and that's what people 10, 15 years ago did. If you go back to, I think, 2000 to 2008 to the banking crisis, they pretty much averaged a 5% increase a year. We are living in that investment today. We are enjoying that investment today. What about 10 years from now of basically zero investment year over year? That's all I had to say. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Kathy Seltzer, would you like to comment?
Good evening, everybody. I want to thank folks for coming out tonight and everybody who was here the other night. I also want to thank my colleagues on the Board of Finance, everyone on the Town Council, the Board of Ed, Brandon Robertson, Tom DeStasio, Bridget Carnamola, Susan Russo. There's a lot of people that put a lot of time and effort into the budget. I just wanted to say a couple things. First of all, about the use of unassigned fund balance. Last year, as my colleagues have already pointed out, we used that money because we knew that money was already there, so to speak. We voted on that around this time. It's 2 months before the end of the fiscal year. The interest revenue was there. We were using it. We knew when we put it in, we'd have it. And as the results show, it didn't have an effect on the unassigned fund balance. Whether or not that creates a hole depends on how that money is used. If you use it for one-time expenditures, one-offs in this particular fiscal year, for example, it doesn't create a hole. It's only if you use it to fund recurring expenses. So whether there's a hole or not, it remains to be seen. It's very hard to figure out how it is year after year we have a surplus of $3 million. Is that a lot of money? It is if it comes from taxes. So I'm just saying, I'm not criticizing, I'm just making an observation. I think there are probably places where we could be doing better. I don't happen to know where they are, and I don't think doing it at a workshop is the right time or the right place to do it. What would be helpful? Excuse me, I'm talking right now. I would appreciate it if you not make comments while I'm talking. Okay? Apologize for what? I'm sorry?
He apologized. He apologized for making noise.
I thought you wanted me to apologize.
No. He apologized for making noise during your comments.
I just want to say that saying it's my opinion, I'm not criticizing someone. Just because you say that I think we can do better, it doesn't mean that I don't think we have a professional, highly talented staff. What I'm saying is the devil is in the details. And I don't think that the public really does have a chance to weigh in except at the end of the process for the referendum. We have a workshop on a Saturday in February that no one attends except the town council. Other towns do it on evenings when people can come. Nothing has changed in the years that I've been on the Board of Finance. So I particularly am not happy with the process. That doesn't mean that it's has to be changed completely. I'm just saying how I feel about it. As far as, now I've lost my train of thought at this point, but in any event, I'm not going to vote against the budget, but I just do think that we ought to try to make it more participatory. And I would like to find out if we can follow the suggestion that was made by one of the commenters at the public hearing on Monday. If we had a more meaningful referendum question, then we would know if someone is voting no or to vote no or to vote, whether they think the level of funding is correct. There has been a time during which I lived in Avon where I voted no on a budget because it was too low, when the Board of Ed was trying at that time to cut the strings program. and cut teachers. A lot of people voted against that. And it really is hard to know why people vote, how they vote if we don't ask. I also wish that we could do a little bit more for people who aren't in a position to pay for their taxes. Right now, we may be doing better than inflation, but a lot of people who I know who are late 50s, early 60s have lost their jobs. When companies are cutting back, they're going to look for the high dollar salaries, and they're going to go for the people that have been there longer, just as an easier way for them to save money. And again, it's not something that we can solve tonight, but it is something that we should be mindful of when we're trying to come up with our tax dollars. That's the whole reason why some of my colleagues and I thought it was worthwhile to try to put some money from the fund balance toward the tax increase when it was so uneven across the taxpayers in town, with those who are least able to afford it, theoretically at least, because they're living in condos, had a 40% increase, which was not the case for those of us living in regular homes. So anyway, thank you very much. Appreciate all that everyone does, and I yield the floor.
Thank you. As chair, I get the option of going last. No one likes raising taxes. That's beginning, end, and the entire extent on it. However, we also want to make sure that we do not underfund growth, and we do not underfund opportunities, especially because the town of Avon is well regarded in part because of its educational system. So the Board of Ed came back with a budget that, in light of all of their comments, to me it looks like it's a fairly bare bones budget. The town's budget is smaller. So I would intend to vote in favor of the budget as presented. So that concludes my personal remarks. So at this point, I would ask if someone is willing to make the motion that I described earlier for the budget at the $118,623,207. And yes, I did read it. Thank you. And do we have a second? Second. All right. It's not. That was on Monday. I specifically said on Monday that the audience would not get a chance to participate. That's correct. The process remains the same. So one of the ways that we can do that is to amend the town charter, but the process is currently the process. So at the moment, we have a motion. So all in favor of the motion?
Aye.
That's unanimous. All right. Thank you all. Now, just so everybody knows the next step, there's the annual budget meeting, which is where the budget is presented to the town as adopted by the Board of Finance. That gives a chance to people to present their views. I like the budget because. I don't like the budget because. I wish things were different because. We will listen to that. And then the budget referendum will then be, the annual budget meeting is May 5 at 7 p.m. and I will sign the notice this evening. And the budget referendum is Wednesday, May 14 from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. At the Senior Center. Sorry, 6 a.m. to 8 p.m. I apologize. All right, that being the business for the board, may I have a motion to adjourn? Second, all in favor? Aye. So the opinion of the chair carries unanimously. Have a lovely evening.